32. Clair Obscure, Expedition 33.
Clair Obscure, Expedition 33. Clair Obscure, Expedition 33. Clair Obscure, Expedition 33. Jennifer English!
Lauréat Testard.
Clair Obscure, Expedition 33.
Expedition 33.
Mon ami Clair Obscure, Expédition 33.
If you look closer at gaming's modern landscape, I think it's a fair call to say there is a certain tier above the rest where only the greats can land themselves. The blockbuster category. It's the upper echelon of titles that do absolutely anything and everything within their genre, and then more on top of that. I can't pretend to know all that much, as that's the entire point of this channel, to play and cover some of the best games on the market with fresh first-hand playthroughs, but Expedition 33 is without a doubt one of the best and most grand games I've ever gotten my hands on. Elden Ring is also waiting in the wings, and considering the comparisons in how good both of these games are, my expectations set by E33 are going to be tough shoes to fill. The only other games I've played recently that I can remotely compare or live up to Clair Obscure would be the likes of Black Myth Wukong or Cyberpunk 2077. The sheer amount of content packed within this single player experience has left me writing this script before even having a chance to complete the game's toughest optional bosses, yet somehow I don't feel any void or emptiness of things to talk about. I can hop back on right now and continue to farm and level myself up in hopes of granting myself a chance at maybe making a dent in the likes of bosses like Simon, Esquier and Clair. But the fact that the most theatrical and difficult fights are merely optional to the already spectacular story, gameplay and world is such a testament to how much enthusiasm I feel when wanting to vouch this game's existence to you. If you have not played through Expedition 33 yourself, do not watch this video. Unless you have some sort of lingering disdain towards turn-based RPGs, I suggest purchasing and going in blind the same way most people have. Some games are just worth experiencing on your own instead of delving into YouTube reviews to see if it's worth your money. For its almost $50 price tag, E33 is worth every penny and more, but enough of the yap and no details. We've got a lot to cover, so without further ado, this is Expedition 33. Him bad there. Unsurprisingly, it's a bit difficult to decide which area of the game should be spoken about first. The reason being that many of the gameplay elements evolve with each progression of the story, so the two go hand in hand. but to me it makes sense to cover the gameplay mechanics first, as it's without a doubt the most addictive area of the experience. Now, it's worth noting this is not only my first RPG, but also my first turn-based game. I really had no idea what to expect, and much of your enjoyment will hinge on whether this component lands. I'd like to first give credit to the tutorials. Despite requiring quite a bit of reading, every explanation is thorough and easy to follow for each new mechanic thrown your way. The core initial mechanics consist of base attacks, free aim shooting.
Wait, I can do this? Really?
Skills, items, parrying, and dodging.
Dodging at the last moment will trigger a perfect dodge.
You can use your skills via the gains of attack points. These attack points can be earned through parrying and base attacks, and then other methods later. Using free aim shots will also consume attack points. Once you play your turn, the opponent will play theirs, then back and forth it will go. The order of who is next to attack can be seen on the left hand side of your screen. Dodging and parrying are both used to avoid damage with different benefits. Dodges have a larger window of execution, making them easier to pull off and avoid damage. If pressed within the perfect smaller window of timing, you will achieve a perfect dodge, which will be useful for certain builds further into your playthrough. But the timing of these perfect dodges is important to learn, as the parry mechanic requires the same timing as a perfect dodge. So they are more difficult to pull off, but with the added benefit of performing a counter attack after the successful execution. If the opponent attack has multiple strikes, you have to successfully parry every hit in order to perform the counter at the end of their combo. On paper, this might seem like a whole lot, and sure, it is, but due to turns not having a time limit, there's plenty of room to consume each mechanic. And the explanations are great. The gameplay loop, however, is only getting started, as in between the combos of consuming skills and free aim shots and then replenishing attack points with base attacks and parries, you have an enormous and well-paced unlock system of skills for each character. The variety of skills and bonus mechanics is where the real meat and depth of the combat lies. The first set of skills you are presented with are Gustav's. His kit is based around building up overcharge with the previously mentioned mechanics, and then dispelling that overcharge with his skills for a massive amount of damage. The more charges consumed, the higher the damage. So, of the two skills you start with, Lumiere Assault can be used to generate additional charges, and per Overcharge's description, we can see another mechanic referred to known as Break. Each enemy will have a golden break meter underneath their health bar that can be charged up by doing damage to them. Once maxed out, this little star symbol will appear. You can then use the break attack to break this meter, stunning the opponent, skipping their turn, and making them take increased damage. Not something that's overly important early on, but becomes very satisfying and useful later in the game. And all of this is just the base set of gameplay mechanics displayed within the game's intro. That and the mostly linear travels on foot with some grapples in for fun. Once the prologue ends and Act 1 begins, the customization of these features begins to open up. From elixirs that can be used to heal your whole squad, and then the addition of a new playable character into your team. Lune is an elementalist, proccing different elemental stains for status effects and consuming those effects to amplify her skills. This consists of fire, ice, lightning, and earth, with the fifth and final being light, which acts as a universal element. So for example, her first two skills shown are Ice Lance and Immolation. Ice Lance will deal damage, thus granting an ice stain. It can also have its damage amplified by consuming an earth stain. Once landing Ice Lance on an enemy and being granted an ice stain, you can then use that ice stain to boost the damage of Immolation as stated by its ability card. Certain skills proc these stains, as will be seen through progression, and the light stain can be consumed in place of any of the other 4 stains. And as per having elemental damage types, certain enemies are vulnerable to specific damage types while others are more resistant. After using Lune and Gustav to triumph over the Neveron, even more mechanics get thrown into your face. Your first Picto is granted. Pictos can be equipped to increase your stats. They can also be leveled up for higher stat bonuses and provide passives on top. These passives can be unlocked and equipped in the form of a separate tab known as Luminas. Luminas are the passives of the Pictos that will be usable in the Lumina section once you have achieved 4 victories with said Picto equipped. This is one of the most in-depth mechanics to help your scaling. Luminas and Pictos will constantly be changed based on your preference per character to sway your builds in whatever direction you see fit. Something as simple as a skill gaining a benefit off of critical hits can warrant you to equip Pictos and Luminas that grant higher crit chance. Choosing and equipping skills, weapons, Pictos, Luminas, and outfits can all be done within your inventory. But upgrading weapons, Lumina capacity, and unlocking skills is done at Expedition Flags once you meet the Curator and he enters your camp. These Expedition Flags are your run-of-the-mill rest posts seen in other boss rush games. You can rest to heal and replenish resources and upgrade your attributes. Attributes affect your overall stats, and once again the UI does a great job of explaining what each attribute affects. Each character can be upgraded with an equal amount of points, with most successful battles resulting in at least 3 attribute points being granted to anyone who levels up. And these statistical upgrades have synergies with your choice of weapon, as certain weapons will gain damage depending on which stats you pour your attribute points into. There are so many parts of building that can be pushed and pulled in different directions with the excessive options in weaponry and abilities, and this depth will keep you addicted throughout the playthrough regardless of whether you choose to tackle side content or not. As I am listing off these mechanics, this is within 3 hours of gameplay. Now, instead of jumping to the next available feature and future characters, I have to touch on this. E33 has one of the most well-tuned difficulties for a regular difficulty mode I've ever felt in a video game. This was absolutely perfect. I always struggle with the first few attempts of a fight. It gets to the point where if I discover a boss that I'm evidently under-leveled for at the time, I will actually welcome the challenge and try to beat him then and there as opposed to later in the game. A few examples of this include the Chromatic Luster, which can be discovered around the start of Act 2. Its attacks can one-shot you with ease, at least with me not doing any side quests or bosses for the greater upgrades at the time, but its attacks seem to have readable windows, so I persisted and took it out within the next 15 minutes.
Eyes don't lie.
Let's go. A later, more powerful version of the Duelist found in the manor proved to have a diabolical amount of health, but due to the previous experience of fighting it in Act 2, I was able to chip away at it in an epic prolonged fight far before I should have been able to.
No. Get going.
Took a while, but I was kind of locked. And finally, without a doubt, the most rewarding, this fucking overpowered mime that I found after finishing the main story. An absolutely filthy amount of HP that took me forever to break, and every single hit was one-shotting me even on my highest HP bar. But it only has 2 combos, so I basically had to learn this combo and be perfect until I could break the meter and put him away. About an hour and a half later, yes, I was suffering for that long because I am shit. But my efforts were rewarded with a smackhead customization to ruin the look of my favourite character, and then also a very unique Picto for some glass cannon builds. Very few attacks have ever felt unfair, and the excitement of discovering a new challenge is unlike anything I've ever felt in a boss-heavy experience before. Now that I've got all of that out of the way, let's talk about the next set of introduced mechanics in Act 1. Mael is our 3rd playable character. Her gameplay revolves around her unique stances. Offensive stance results in more damage at the cost of taking increased damage. Defensive stance reduces incoming damage, but you gain attack points on parry or dodge. And then finally, virtuous stance provides you with a massive 200% damage buff with no hindrance, but the caveat is that virtuous is harder to enter. Her kit is suggested to loop between stances by going from offensive to defensive, and virtuous when possible in order to keep the benefits rolling. But if you disrupt the loop, you will exit your current stance. The stance which you will enter per skill is displayed in the top right of the card. Certain skills gain benefits depending on the stance you cast it during. Virtuous is without a doubt the best and becomes increasingly accessible based on unlockable weapons and skills later in the game. During her gameplay introduction, you will also run into your first jump engagement. Shortly after the yellow reticle appears, you must jump over the attack to avoid damage, with a follow-up counter being available shortly after. As for Mael, from my experience, she hard carries the early and mid game, and when invested in can also nuke the toughest bosses in the late game, easily capping out at 10k damage before being able to push past it, meaning she has a quick access to the highest damage number available during Act 1 and 2. Now, speaking on my own experience, it was around this point in the game when I fully started to realise just how special of a game I was playing. 5 hours in sounds a little excessive, but I was so immersed in the story and enthralled with the turn-based combat that I hadn't taken time to stop and smell the roses. I'd say at least 70% of the time I'd take up the opportunity to fight a random group of enemies instead of passing by purely for the practice. And in between battles, the larger open areas left for you to wander and find spare pictos, Lumina points and expedition journals scratch just enough of an itch in exploration to prevent any linear paths feeling restrictive. There's also no lack of variety in enemy attacks. The Burgeon is an early encounter that has an unavoidable attack that removes one of your squad members from the fight until you break its meter, forcing you to be less reliant on the lives available on your team. And often the difficult hindrances of each boss is determined by their status effects. Some can invert your squad, meaning that healing will cause them to take damage instead. You can be charmed and forced to attack each other, or even prevented from using any skills with the likes of silence. There are 25 total, a lot of which you'll be using yourself. Some are admittedly unnoticeable and not very useful on either side. Some of the debuffs, for instance like slow, powerless and shell, are not important in the long run, but don't cause any nuisance by existing. And speaking of some stats effects, now is the perfect time to segue into my favourite character in the entire game. The main story will eventually lead you into a Gestural tournament. As per the previous events, this is another instance of being reunited with a member of the expedition, and this time it's CL. CL has, in my opinion, the most satisfying gameplay loop available, not to mention the sickest weapon in the game, a double-bladed scythe. CL's skills focus around Foretell. Skills that apply Foretell will grant you a Sun Charge, but if you cast a skill that consumes Foretell, you'll be given a Moon Charge. Sun Charges will grant you an attack point per Foretell consumed, whilst Moon Charges will generate an attack point per Foretell applied. When applying both a Sun and Moon Charge, you will enter Twilight for 2 turns. Twilight State doubles the amount of Foretell that can be applied onto the enemy from 10 to 20. It also doubles how much Foretell you apply, and you'll gain a damage bonus based on how many of these Sun and Moon Charges you consumed when entering Twilight. So for example, if you keep casting Sun skills for a few turns to stack those charges, then use a Moon skill to enter Twilight, all of those Sun charges will add to the damage you deal in Twilight. Now yes, this character is extremely overwhelming and difficult to understand at first because there's so much going on. But this is the 4th available squad member, and you can only have 3 people in your team at once, so if you want, you can just learn CL later and keep one-tricking someone like Mael to prevent you from getting confused or overwhelmed by a new character. But in my instance, I quickly became addicted to her playstyle and trying to find the best combos to unlock. And no, it's totally not just because she's hot, okay? Alright, maybe a little bit, but the pattern of building up charges to do an abundance of damage is something that never gets old. And it also helps that one of her earliest found weapons is also one of her best. The Chation, despite making you a bit of a glass cannon, will apply 10 Foretell, making it way more efficient for consuming those Foretell charges for increased damage. And it can also apply a Moon Charge and burn on base attack. I used this for a large portion of my playthrough until another strong option was available later. CL is amazing and one of my favourite characters I've ever played in a video game. The Foretell Sun Moon Charge loop is such a well thought out process, and outside of some opponents being resistant to dark damage, she'll make quick work of anything once you enter Twilight. Now, bear in mind, it is still Act 1 during CL's introduction. The amount of experimentation available with team comp and build choices is fucking stellar by this point, and the start of Act 2, the pseudo 4th class becomes available. This is mainly a story focused instance in regards to Verso's inclusion, but Verso replaces Gustav as a member of the group. He can use all of Gustav's weapons but has a different kit. Verso will gain perfection ranks when doing damage from D to S. The higher his rank, the higher his damage, and his skills gain different effects based on which rank they are casted during. Taking any damage, however, will reduce his current rank. Early on, I wasn't too much of a fan of Verso's kit. Arguably the best way to run him is between a free aim focused build or a glass cannon setup, in which he reduces his health to deal a larger portion of damage with his berserk / skill, and I wasn't overly confident in my ability to parry or dodge whilst keeping myself at such a low margin of health, as when I did try it would just result in me getting one-shotted. But after the main story, in my quest to try the optional content, Verso's damage is such a huge increase to your DPS that I couldn't help but add him to my squad and actually invest in his skills. Around Verso's first playable area, gradient counters are also added to your kit. These are heavy attacks involving a grey slow motion wind up that must be blocked with RT instead of RB, assuming you're playing on a controller. A successful parry will do a large amount of damage as a counter, and sometimes these will come up at the end of a combo. Normal parries require a perfect sequence in order to perform the counter at the end of a combo. But if you were to miss any parries or dodges in an enemy combo but land the gradient parry, the counter will go through regardless. It's a neat switch up to the enemy pacing and opens up the counterattack opportunities more than just off of the regular parries. Now, the main boss of the following area is your first time meeting the Duelist. Not only is this fight refined in terms of difficulty, but it's such a fucking spectacle. Multiple phases, prolonged combos with a variety and angled attacks, and once you are victorious, they reward the player with a badass finishing sequence. Yes, bro. Fuck. Now, before we move on to our next character, we can touch on Esquier's role in the gameplay. Esquier is a pseudo vehicle for not only faster travel, but also to reach areas blocked off by rubble. He can also be upgraded via the relationship system to unlock flying and diving, which allows you to access locations in the sky or below water. Outside of using fast travel points once you're at a certain location, he is really the main form of progressing through the world, and my only real critique is that even when holding RT, he doesn't move that fast, especially for being quote unquote the most powerful being in the universe, but he more than makes up for it for being adorable and hilarious.
But Flory was stolen by my arch nemesis, the one whose every step shakes the foundation of the world, the one known as François.
Okay.
And speaking of being funny, this is Minoko.
No distraction, son. I'm really busy beating up strangers.
Introduced in Act 2, he becomes the 5th playable member of your squad. Minoko is the spirit guy. He collects Nevron feet in order to be able to transform into them for his skills. He needs to be active in your party when killing the Nevrons in order to gain said Nevron as a skill. And there are a whole lot of them, Jesus Christ. And due to his sheer array of skills you can unlock, he unsurprisingly becomes one of the most versatile members of the expedition. He has incredible healing options, attacks that proc all sorts of elements, break attacks, skills that ignore shields, which became extremely useful during Cyrene's location. He does everything, and more importantly, feels good to build this way. Minoko can also amplify his correlating skills when casting if you look at his Bestial Wheel. Casting a skill when you have the stated mask active will improve its overall effects, and you can cycle through this wheel in a number of different ways based on the weapon that you have equipped with him. And that's your last squad member. But wait, there is another mechanic added to the combat. Minoko's tutorial introduces gradient attacks. This is essentially the gradient attacks that have been used on you, except now you can charge up your own. These are charged by casting skills, with the charges being a universal meter for the group. So using a gradient charge on a skill means you lose a charge for everyone. You can get up to 3 of these charges, with the unlockable gradient strikes varying in cost from 1 to 3. Other gradient strikes are unlocked via the relationship system by speaking to each character until they are maximum rank. What's great about gradient strikes is that they aren't just pseudo ultimates, they actually still synergize with the rest of your skills and share similar attributes, except they don't count as a turn if you only already have one. So let's say your build didn't have the picto known as cheetah, in which you have 2 turns, you'd be able to use a gradient strike and then do a turn on top of that. You'd think that Act 3 and all side content would become boring with no more options added from here, but it's not even close to losing its spark. And you may be wondering why I haven't put much emphasis on the importance of items. The reality is that items don't really become too much of a requirement until late in Act 3, if even that. You can heal an ally, revive a teammate, or grant attack points. I was absolutely crushing these once the flattening began past the final boss, but it's a welcome resource to fall back on. God man, there's just so many parts of the gameplay that kept me coming back. It's difficult to emphasize which features impressed me the most because I've already listed and praised everything, but when you see them in application with specific bosses, it all comes together. In terms of a favourite boss of mine, without a doubt for me it was Sprong. Sprong is an optional giant boss that lurks in the oceans of the continent. After finishing Act 3, his health bar is enormous alongside with his damage, but the combos are quite readable. It makes for a fun yet prolonged battle and a satisfying win, and I think I did this on my first try. Maybe that's why I liked it so much. Let's go. First try. Expedition 33's gameplay was an unexpected surprise. Going in with the notion that the story is special was already enough to sell me, but the turn-based combat, fun and stylish characters, and unique build customization for a variety of gameplay loops had me addicted in a way very few games have ever achieved. As I said, as I'm writing this, there are still more fights for me to complete if I wish to seek out a challenge. But the gameplay's evolution throughout the story is what ties everything together. As the narrative progresses, so does your power, which is where we can now finally tie in all this praise for the gameplay into Expedition 33's incredible story. The story begins in Lumiere with Maëlle and her guardian Gustave, and you will immediately notice just how excellent the voice acting is.
Have you tried throwing with your other arm instead? If you could hit the paintress directly, that would actually be useful.
You know, hobbies don't always have to be useful. I'm enjoying the uselessness of today and readying my usefulness for tomorrow.
I straight away recognised Charlie Cox and then later Ben Starr, specifically from their work in Daredevil and Warframe. But absolutely everyone in this cast holds their own. Lumiere has a yearly event known as the Gamage, in which the number painted into the sky is reduced by 1 by this large mystical being known as the Paintress. Once this happens, everyone who shares the same age as the removed number gets Thanos snapped away. The prologue does a great job in showing the emotional trauma that comes with such an event, with a brief but beautifully acted relationship between Gustave and Sophie, his ex-girlfriend. There are tensions between the two as they clearly still love one another, and what I love so much about their short time together is that they seem to be ignoring the impending doom heading their way throughout the entire day.
I've lived 33 good years. Look around. We've had our whole lives to prepare. We're all fine. Mostly.
Which makes the unexpected loss of Sophie and the revelation that she is 34 years old utterly heartbreaking.
I'm here.
And yes, now would be a great time to mention how brilliant the soundtrack is, and this remains the same across the game's journey, especially once you witness the boss exclusives. The expeditions take place after the Gamage, with every one of the oldest remaining people along with any other volunteers such as Mael, who is only 16 years of age, in which they travel to the continent in an attempt to take out the Paintress and stop the Gamage. Upon your arrival for Expedition 33, you are however met with a rude awakening.
Get ready.
You're old. How did you survive the Gamage? Which expedition are you from? Fall back!
Chaos erupts in one of the most gripping cutscenes you could have made to begin off at Act 1. Gustav is completely separated from any potential survivors, and after being slaughtered so easily, he gives up all hope. But Lune is there to stop him.
You do that, we both die.
Survivor, yeah, that's right, brother.
Hey, we're the only ones left. You don't get to die.
With their backs against the wall, it's quickly established the type of character that Lune is. She doesn't give up regardless of the seemingly unwinnable situation, constantly reminding the group that they must continue the expedition no matter how many of them perish. To Gustav's relief, the next beat in the journey is the discovery of Mael, albeit whilst being unknowingly stalked. Mael has been chilling away inside a mansion under the protection of the Curator. The Curator remains a mystery for a large portion of the game and seems to have good intentions, with him offering upgrades at your camp. And I gotta say, Gustav's and Mael's reunion is really where you start to buy into their love for each other. It allows their cutscenes together to flourish whilst they bond. Charlie Cox does a wonderful job conveying his panic and comfort when Mael is around, and it becomes clear that her presence gives him more hope to pursue the expedition. And I also love how there is no cliche of the father figure constantly whining that the teenager isn't ready or it's too dangerous for you. Gustav has confidence in Mael's ability to handle herself throughout the entire expedition. It was by this point in the gameplay that I realised all of the mechanics were available to read through the menu, and you can also peep all found logs from previous expeditions. This obviously expands the lore, and I love the visual storytelling that accompanies the locations each one of these is found at.
Cassandra, 45th. Oh shit, they were all crushed. If Timote hadn't pushed me out of the way.
Damn, you can see all the blood by her legs. Fucking hell. How many expeditions is this? They got crushed down here by this fucking Neveron. Oh my god. The narrative continues to unravel with Mael's nightmares, the first of which includes a face which we have not seen before. You'll be asking a whole lot of questions when these pop up, but the payoff for what they reveal is worth it. Continuing the main story will have you introduced to the Gestrals, which serve as a large portion of comedy relief. And the comedy is both welcome and not overdone. They are unserious and easily manipulated, and most importantly, they love to fight. Don't attack for a while. Oh, has it got a sick soundtrack? Oh, fuck yeah. Their engagements eventually lead you to the Gestral village where you meet Golgra, and within the area are plenty of dialogue options and even free pictos. Golgrot appears to be the ruler of this location and is willing to let you enter their tournament. You whip some gestural arse until the final opponent is revealed, another survivor of your group, CL.
Wait, that's...
CL?
Fourth member of our team?
What? How? You guys? You're alive! I thought I was the only one left. I knew you were resourceful. How did you get here? They're expecting a bit of a show.
Okay.
Shall we?
After a little spar and finishing the tournament, you are not only granted the Medellum for Mael, which is one of the best weapons, but Golgrot also gives you the password to Esquia's nest as a reward. Come on, lad.
Get out of my way! Yes.
No. It's just that it's the password.
Yeah, I like this woman. Fuck. That dude's big.
Mes amis.
Hey, bonjour mon ami. CL? What? I don't know. He seems nice.
Esquia is wonderful. He's so innocent and against the grain for being the most powerful entity in the world, and the entire point of your next journey being a requirement purely because Esquier is lazy is peak comedy. He agrees to help you as long as you help him get his rocks. The nightmares at the camp continue, with the unk that slaughtered your whole squad popping up with a masked girl yapping riddles that I'm simply not smart enough to explain, even after finishing the game.
Do you know? We are fellows. Those who know not that they are not.
I have no fucking clue what she was just yapping about, bro. After cooking the Lampmaster and acquiring the Florry for Esquier, he is ready to ride you through the ocean. But unfortunately, it's been a while since something traumatic has happened. It feels like I'm only 30% of the way into the game. Oh shit. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Just when shit was going well.
What about that one?
Oh, damn. This dude got hella aura.
Does it really matter?
I'm fearing for Gustav here. I don't like this.
Well, you know, like I always say.
Wait, is it whoever's not on your squad?
It's more about... Run.
Gustav's death makes you feel so powerless, but it's such a solid use of increasing the stakes during a still very early part of the game. You've had enough time with him to develop such a strong connection and buy into his relationship with Mael especially. And there's mechanical stakes here too. Even though Verso is introduced in the same scene and enters your squad with the capability to use Gustav's weapons, all of Gustav's skills and his kit is just gone. He is really dead. Verso is also the guy that's been stalking you this whole time and previously showed up in one of Mael's nightmares. He quote-unquote handles things here and subsequently joins the squad in place of Gustav. Much like the prick who took away Charlie Cox, Verso does not age. What a chat!
But how are you alive and not...
Old?
Huh?
I don't know exactly, but some of us stopped aging, and we're not affected by the gamage.
Some of you? Like the man on the cliff?
Renoir. Our commander.
Renoir.
Why? Why did he massacre our team? How could he turn on his own people?
He believes his immortality is a gift from the paintress. Killing her would kill him too, and he enjoys living forever.
Who the fuck
And
would
you
enjoy
don't?
living forever?
Burying everyone you know while you live on
Exactly.
can weigh you down a bit. I couldn't help your friend, but perhaps I can help you.
You want to join us?
If you don't mind the company. Yes.
So, if I want to kill Renoir, I have to kill the paintress first.
Hopefully it is that just, you know, that simple. Probably not though.
Verso.
Oh, it's a cool name. Hello, Verso. Next stop is the monolith. Maëlle wishes to bury Gustave's robotic arm, and keeping in character, Lune says they should stay focused on the mission. But Verso reassures her that he knows a spot. After a grueling fight with the duelist, we bury Gustave's arm in a heartbreaking scene. Potentially the saddest offering of all the cutscenes, but a beautiful halt in pacing to deliver the final blow on the loss of the first character we played as.
You were always there for me.
I'll save them.
Say hi to Soph for me, yeah?
We could never tell if you were my brother or my father. But to me, you were both. Best brother and father I've ever had.
When one falls, we continue.
Thanks for being my family.
Our next stop is the meetup with Verso's friend Minoko. Minoko is a gestural, thus easily convinced to join the expedition through Verso's crafty manipulation.
To what do we owe the pleasure of your company?
We're heading for Old Lumiere.
Okay, bye.
Hey, come on. Hey.
Out of the question. I will never join you again.
There will be a lot of fighting, though.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's true.
There will be a lot of fighting.
Exactly.
Count me in then. Good.
Dude, the fucking gestuals, brother, are so funny.
Good.
Noko's coming too.
Oh my god. We go to Old Lumiere in an attempt to get to the paintress heart, but get separated along the way. In the separation, Lune and Seal question the trust they have in Verso, and those suspicions ring true, as upon Verso and Maëlle finding Renoir in the mansion, we learn that not only is the masked girl and curator lady Renoir's family, but Verso is also his son.
You haven't told her the truth.
Oh god.
Have you, son?
Oh. What the fuck?
Sorry we're late. We were busy doing a bit of reading. Were you planning on sharing that this man, the man who murdered our team, is your father?
Renoir spends the next 30 minutes rocking my shit, and then flees after murking Minoko's gestural friend Noko, whom we had met shortly after Maëlle. Noko's death admittedly didn't faze me, because he's given very little to do in the story and is greatly outshined, the definition of a disposable side character, and his main role is purely to bring more depth to Minoko and the gestural lore. Maëlle's following nightmare is where I really start to question why the masked girl looks a hell of a lot like Maëlle. Renoir also hints that Maëlle doesn't know who she is, and we get a hint as to why this girl is disfigured, with the flames in the background. Looks like her.
What is that?
We get some bickering over Verso covering up his connection to Renoir, but he deflects it, adamant that they cut ties years ago, and after losing their shot at the paintress heart, they look to the curator for help.
Can you make a weapon that can pierce the barrier? Do you need something from the axons? Do you need their hearts?
Look, to create this weapon, he needs enormous amounts of pure chroma, which is way beyond what we can get from Nevrons. The only source are axons, yes. But like I said, that's a dead end, it's impossible.
Why? What are axons?
They're massive creatures living on islands around the monolith. Their much stronger and much more dangerous than Nevron's. I can't die, and I still couldn't take them down.
Yet we found the corpse of one in Old Lumiere, so it's possible.
I don't know how that one died. But I'm telling you, listen to me, please. Our chances of taking them down without you lot dying are close to zero.
The first Axon I fight is Serene. Her powers play off emotions, and I really enjoyed the twist of Lune seemingly being the most influenced by Serene's charm, only to be the one to overcome it at the end of the fight due to her commitment to the mission. Now unfortunately this is where I ran into my first technical issue with the cutscene going black screen after I beat the boss. I don't want to dwell too much on this issue and have it ruin my opinion on the game, but just know it returned later even after fixing this instance. The second Axon is the Mask Keeper. His theme is around facades and masking who you are, and a neat touch is the impact doing the correlating side bosses has on the fight, as defeating the masks will prevent them from assisting him. Shit on. Let's go, Seal. With enough chroma now acquired to build the weapon, we can finally get to the Paintress, and she is untouchable. Instead of fighting, the whole squad seemingly enters one of Mael's nightmares, and we see the same faceless lady from the mansion in Old Lumiere. She is the real Paintress. The fire makes a return, raising more questions that will soon to be answered, and then you are led into the Monolith, working our way up the mountains of the Monolith through countless boss engagements and a few frame issues. We bump into the Faceless Boy. Now, this guy has been showing up as an optional form of dialogue in many locations. I'll admit, with everything going on in this game, I found it tricky to care or even remember anything he was yapping about, probably because I despise reading and he has no fucking voice lines, but this not so optional train station greeting signifies his later revealed importance. We defeat a boss named Clair Obscure, which essentially means that we beat the game, and then we enter our much anticipated rematch with Renoir at the heart of the Monolith. Renoir and Verso argue again in regards to their opposing goals, and then the fight begins. This time with an electric lion to back him up at half HP. Now this next part is confusing but makes sense later, as the curator shows up and Renoir refers to Verso as his son as well.
This is all you have left of your son.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
The curator and Mael then gamage Renoir, and now for the finale of Act 2, you must take on the Paintress. She speaks on the fire again and refers to Mael as Alicia, then claiming that she is not Alicia and that Verso is not the one she knows. It's a difficult fight, and I honestly thought it was about to be the end of the game because I forgot what act we were in. As we win and let her fade away in our arms, she once again calls Mael Alicia, and with her gone, so do the numbers on the Monolith. You've actually done it. Or so you think. The story is far from over. The group returns to Lumiere to cheers and relief. Mael has to confront Gustave's sister, as well as his pupils, to break the news that he didn't make it. But while everybody else celebrates, Verso reads a letter from his sister, the masked girl Alicia. As the letter comes to a close, a huge wave of energy comes from the Monolith, and everyone is wiped out. Now, I was confused, but partly because after the boss fight, the cutscenes went black screen again, so I had to go to YouTube to watch and sync up what I was missing. This frustrated me a shit ton and kind of took my immersion away, but this is the part of the game where a bunch of information is filled in with the start of the third act. After everyone is seemingly gamaged, we wake up as Alicia 16 years in the past, living in the mansion that we have frequented. She has no voice, and that disfigured face she's been covering with a mask. Our sister Claire calls to us and we meet to find our parents trapped in this painting. Claire explains that they are stuck in the painting fighting, with Aline at the top of the monolith and Renoir at the bottom. The family are not just human beings, they are painters. Painters are higher beings that can paint real worlds into canvases and even head inside them to reside there. And they can change the paintings the same way they made them in the first place. Now, the original son, the younger Verso, made the canvas that your parents are stuck in. Esquier, for example, is actually one of his childhood toys. Clair also spent some time in the painting, creating the Nevrons. Renoir painted representations of his family in the form of the Axons. Now, what is this mystery surrounding the fire? The painters are not the most powerful entities in this world, as they have beef with the writers. The writers are assumingly above everyone else and cause a fire in the family's real-world household. Verso died in the fire by saving Alicia, essentially sacrificing himself, hence her injuries. Aline blames Alicia for Verso's death. Now, both parents are stricken with grief due to Verso's passing, but Aline takes it much worse and resorts to residing inside of Verso's painting. The reason being that due to Verso painting it, it essentially has the last remaining piece of his soul inside. She paints herself a new perfect family inside of the canvas. The older, loyal Renoir and adult Verso, who retains the memories of his previously alive self. So the real Aline is the paintress and the real Renoir is the curator. Those are the two that went into the painting. She dwells in the canvas as a way to cope with her grief, but instead of painting a perfect Alicia, she paints her with all of her injuries due to blaming her for Verso's death. So both Alicias have to suffer in and out of the canvas. The real Renoir outside of the canvas wants his wife back, so he goes in after her. Now he can't just destroy the canvas and the world while she's still inside, so once he enters, he starts unpainting all of the creations in an attempt to make her leave. She imprisons him at the bottom of the monolith, and he imprisons her at the top, hindering each other's power over the canvas. But Renoir can still erase 1 year of people in correlating age in the form of the gamage. So the number painted at the top of the monolith is actually Aline, giving everyone a warning as to when Renoir will use his powers to erase, as stated in Alicia's letter. So killing the paintress, which is Aline, you essentially unleashed Renoir's full power to gamage everyone. The expeditions are going out to stop Aline, not knowing that she is saving those that she can, so that's why the Nevrons and the Renoir that she painted are there to stop them. Alicia wants to enter the canvas to help stop the never-ending conflict, but in order to prevent the parents from re-entering once they're out, Clair and Alicia hide the canvas. As Alicia enters the canvas, she is instead repainted as her true self by Aline's chroma, without the scars or vocal cord damage. She becomes Maëlle, the girl living the life that she wishes she could without the suffering of her injuries or mother's blame. But Maëlle does not want to leave the canvas now, as her existence in it is not miserable, whilst Verso still wishes to discontinue after being alive for so long. So now Renoir has the same tension that he has with Aline, but with Alicia, because they both want to live in the canvas. So you'll have to defeat Renoir in order to retain Verso's canvas to exist in it. Maëlle repaints her friends, but Verso knows that she is going down the exact same path as her mother, becoming addicted to life in the canvas to cope with her real-world pain. But Maëlle is adamant, and uses the trapped chroma in the dead expeditioners' bodies to paint her own army to face Renoir's.
We'll have to move fast. I can't maintain them for very long. Tomorrow comes.
The battles through Lumiere are absolutely awesome, especially when we face the creation. It serves as a solid warm-up fight for the ultimate finale. The group tries one last time to convince Renoir to let Mael stay in the canvas and leave it be, and I really appreciate that he sees both sides of the story and sees her friends as real people even though they are just painted, but he can't let up on trying to bring his wife and daughter back into the real world. This fight is insane. Multiple stages, difficult combos, a crazy background of which he summons his accents in to his aid, and just when all hope seems lost, as we can't make a dent in his HP, Arlene comes to our aid, and she uses the paintress from her boss fight to damage the accent representation of her, preventing it from healing Renoir. Mael does some aura farming to counter Renoir's final blow to end the fight. But he doesn't die. Instead, with no options left, he resorts to showing the group what happens to those under the long exposure of the canvas, and the damage done to Arlene that would eventually be done to Mael should she stay. But he can't convince her and accepts his reality. Defeated in battle and unable to turn any tides, Renoir finally lets up and gives his daughter what she wants. God, they even make the villain so likeable and layered. But now, painted Verso, who has so desperately wanted to die for so long, decides to take matters into his own hands by trying to go through the portal into the real world. This of course does not work, and instead he ends up in the heart of the canvas. This is also where Verso's last remnant is, along with his broken form, the boy we've seen across the game. This boy has been the last part of the original Verso the whole time, and the reason why Arlene even came here, and he's been in a perpetual loop of painting, much like the painted Verso who is tired of living. After Verso comes to terms with his want for the opposite outcome of Mael, you must choose who to play and determine your ending. I personally sided with Mael, but neither option feels correct. The same pain I wish Mael to be ridden of in the real world that she would achieve by staying in the canvas is the same pain I want Verso to be ridden of if he were to cease his far too prolonged existence by having the canvas be destroyed. No matter the choice, either Verso or Mael will suffer, and in the case of my ending, Mael offers to allow Verso to age.
If you could grow old, would you find a reason to smile?
She repaints everyone that was lost, and we see Verso, but older, living in the canvas with all of her friends, and Verso accepting that he can eventually die after one last lifetime. But the repercussions of what the exposure to the canvas did to Arlene are the direct source of this ending's cliffhanger and its effects on Mael. Expedition 33's story is an emotional roller coaster with unexpected twists and stakes. The relationship system can easily be spoken in the same vein for its contributions to your care for each character, and at no point do you feel disconnected from the world that's being untwisted with every story beat. The final act is maybe a little complicated, but I think it's mostly a skill issue on my end, and once I caught up with what was being shown, it sticks the landing. And something about Mael's spooky ending was just perfect. It's this unexpected dread I wasn't expecting to feel, yet it feels so right. Just an utter masterpiece in storytelling and world building. Your experience will vary depending on which order you decide to tackle side content. Optional bosses and quests will all make you more powerful in the long run, but for me, the true meat of the game ends with the main story. Everything else I did after inside of the continent was just pure fun and for the sake of challenge. It's almost unbelievable how much content is available, and if you do these during the main story, you might outscale the final boss and ruin the experience. And it's honestly just impressive that I have so much content to come back to. New Game Plus is there, even past the likes of Simon, Clair and SK's boss fights, but it doesn't even need to exist. E33 is so many things at once. Much like your attributes, it's almost as if the dev team set out to make an experience with maxed out stats in all areas. Maybe describing excellent games as blockbusters is the incorrect term, because they aren't based around soulless wow factor. E33 is a vision pasted perfectly onto a canvas. Each paint stroke was with a steady hand, and thus it will go down in history as one of the few must-plays regardless of genres you're interested in. If you have enjoyed today's video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Any support will do me wonders and allow me to keep making these essays in the future. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, take care.